Dominic Russo kicked open the kitchen door, his hand already reaching for the gun at his hip. But what he saw made him freeze. His 3 daughters silent for 14 months. Not a single word, not a single laugh were sitting on the kitchen table. Legs swinging, mouths wide open in song. A black woman stood in the middle of the room. Flour on her apron, one of his girls perched on her shoulders, pulling her hair and laughing. The sound hit Dominic like a bullet to the chest. But instead of gratitude, something dark twisted inside him. Jealousy, rage. And in the next 3 minutes, he would destroy the only miracle his family had left. Comment below what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Dominic Russo put 3 bullets into Carmine Tessio's head at 2:47 in the morning. The warehouse smelled like rust and gasoline. Carmine was on his knees, hands bound behind his back, blood already dripping from where Marco had worked him over. "You thought you could skim from me." Dominic's voice was flat, cold. The voice of a man who had killed so many times that death had become paperwork. "Dom, please!" Carmine's words came out wet broken. "I got kids. I got 3 kids, Dom. Please." Dominic didn't blink. "So do I." He pulled the trigger. Once, twice, 3 times. Carmine collapsed forward, and Dominic stepped back to avoid the blood pooling toward his Italian leather shoes. Marco stood in the shadows, arms crossed. "The Gambinos are going to ask questions." "Let them ask." Dominic holstered the gun. "Clean this up. I'm going home." But he didn't go home. He went to the airport instead. Chicago had a problem that needed solving. Then Miami. Then Las Vegas. There was always something, always somewhere else to be, always a reason not to walk through the front door of that mansion on Long Island. Because home meant silence. Home meant 3 little girls who used to call him Daddy, who used to run to him when he walked through the door, who used to fight over who got to sit on his lap at dinner. Now they didn't speak. Not to him. Not to anyone. 14 months of absolute silence. It started with a phone call. Dominic was in Chicago, sitting in a steakhouse with 2 aldermen he owned and a union boss who owed him. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Rosa. He almost ignored it. Rosa never called unless he answered. "Boss." Her voice was shaking. "You need to come home. Now." "What happened?" "It's Isabella." Rosa was crying. He'd never heard Rosa cry. "They shot her. The Mendez cartel. They shot her outside the school. She's boss. She's gone." The phone slipped from Dominic's hand. He didn't remember the flight back. He didn't remember the drive from the airport. He only remembered walking into the hospital morgue and seeing her. Isabella. His wife. His heart. The only person in the world who had ever looked at him and seen something worth loving. She lay on a metal table, under fluorescent lights, a white sheet pulled up to her shoulders. Her face was peaceful, almost like she was sleeping, except for the dark bruise on her temple, where the bullet had Dominic turned away and vomited. A detective was waiting outside. Young guy nervous, clearly knew who Dominic was and wanted to be anywhere else. "Mr. Russo, I'm sorry for your loss. We have some preliminary—" "Where are my daughters?" "They're safe. They were in the car when it happened. Your wife, she—" The detective swallowed. "She used her body as a shield. She covered all 3 of them. They don't have a scratch." Dominic's legs nearly gave out. "The girls saw it." "Yes, sir. They saw everything." The funeral was 3 days later. Dominic stood at the gravesite, his 3 daughters lined up beside him. Lucia, Valentina, Mia. 4 years old, identical triplets, black curls, and their mother's brown eyes. They didn't cry. They didn't speak. They just stood there, holding hands, staring at the coffin being lowered into the ground. Dominic tried to hold Lucia's hand. She pulled away. He tried to pick up Mia. She went stiff as a board in his arms, and when he looked at her face, there was nothing there. No recognition, no fear, no anything. Just empty. After the funeral, the psychologist came. Dr. Rebecca Chen, child trauma specialist from Columbia Presbyterian. She spent 2 hours with the girls while Dominic paced the hallway outside like a caged animal. When she finally emerged, her face was grave. "Mr. Russo, your daughters are experiencing acute selective mutism triggered by severe psychological trauma. They witnessed their mother's violent death. Their minds have essentially shut down the verbal processing centers as a protective mechanism." Dominic didn't understand half those words. "So fix it." "It's not that simple. This kind of trauma, I don't care what it costs. I don't care what it takes. Fix my daughters." Dr. Chen looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Mr. Russo, this isn't about money. These things take time, sometimes months, sometimes years, sometimes—" She hesitated. "Sometimes children never fully recover." "Get out!" "Mr. Russo!" "I said, get out." He hired another psychologist the next day, then another, then a specialist from Switzerland, then a team from a children's hospital in London. He took the girls to Disney World. They walked through the Magic Kingdom in silence, holding hands, staring at nothing. He took them to the Hamptons. They sat on the beach for hours, without moving, without speaking, without even looking at the ocean. He bought them puppies. The puppies ran around their feet, barking, licking, begging for attention. The girls didn't react. He built them a castle in the backyard, a real castle with towers, and a drawbridge and a moat. They never went inside. Nothing worked. Meanwhile, Dominic did what he knew how to do. He hunted. The Mendez cartel had killed his wife to send a message. They controlled the drug routes through the southern border, and they wanted Dominic to know they could reach him anywhere, anytime. They thought it would make him afraid. They were wrong. It took 3 months. Dominic didn't delegate. He didn't send his men. He went himself. He found Eduardo Mendez in a safe house in Arizona. Eduardo was the one who had ordered the hit, the one who had signed Isabella's death warrant. Dominic spent 4 hours with him before he finally let him die. He found the 2 shooters in Mexico City. They were hiding in a church of all places. Dominic burned it down with them inside. He found every lieutenant, every captain, every soldier who had any connection to the hit. 17 men in total. By the time he was done, the Mendez cartel didn't exist anymore. But when he walked back through the door of his mansion on Long Island, his daughters were still silent. Revenge hadn't brought Isabella back. Revenge hadn't made his girls speak. And for the first time in his life, Dominic Russo felt completely, utterly powerless. So he ran. It was easier than staying. Marco handled the day-to-day operations. Rosa took care of the girls. And Dominic found reasons, always good reasons, always important reasons to be somewhere else. The Chicago situation needs personal attention. The Gambinos want a face-to-face. Atlantic City is falling apart. Every excuse was legitimate. Every trip was necessary. And every time he walked past his daughter's bedroom door, he told himself he'd spend more time with them when he got back. He never did. 14 months passed like this. 14 months of silence in that big empty mansion. 14 months of Rosa doing her best to care for 3 little ghosts. 14 months of Dominic telling himself that this was the only way that his daughters needed time, that they would come back to him eventually, that the best thing he could do was provide for them, protect them, make sure no one ever hurt them again. 14 months of lying to himself. It was Rosa who finally broke. She found him in his study one evening, signing papers he didn't read, drinking whiskey he couldn't taste. "Boss, I need to talk to you." Dominic didn't look up. "What is it?" "I can't do this anymore." Her voice cracked. "The house is too big. The girls need more care than I can give. I'm 62 years old and I'm the only one here. I need help." "Then hire help." It's not that simple. Those girls, they need more than a housekeeper. They need their mother. Dominic's voice was sharp, final. But she's dead, so they get what's available. Hire whoever you need. Run background checks. I don't care about the cost. Rosa stood there for a long moment looking at him with an expression he couldn't read. Then she nodded and walked out. 2 weeks later, she found Keisha Williams. Keisha arrived at the iron gates at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. She looked up at the security cameras, she counted 5 visible, probably more she couldn't see, and took a deep breath. The gate opened without her pressing the intercom. They'd been watching her since she got off the bus. The driveway was longer than some streets in the Bronx. Stone-paved, perfectly maintained, lined with trees that had probably been planted before she was born. The mansion at the end looked like something from a movie. No, not a movie. Movies had warmth. This place looked like a fortress. A very expensive prison. 2 men in black suits stood at the front door. They didn't greet her. They didn't smile. They just watched with flat, dead eyes as she approached. She saw the bulges under their jackets. Guns, both of them carrying. "Turn around," a voice in her head screamed. "This isn't a place for someone like you. Turn around and run." But she couldn't run. She needed this job. She needed money for Marcus's lawyer. She needed money for rent. She needed money to survive. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. So she kept walking. Rosa met her in the sitting room. The older woman looked exhausted. Deep lines around her eyes. Silver hair that probably used to be black, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. "You're Keisha Williams." "Yes, ma'am." "Sit down." Keisha sat. She kept her hands flat on her thighs to stop them from shaking. Rosa was quiet for a long moment, studying her. Then she asked, "Are you scared?" Keisha knew she wasn't asking about the job. She was asking about the armed men, the security cameras, the fortress, everything. "Yes, ma'am. I'm scared." Rosa's eyebrow lifted slightly. "But you're still here." "I've been scared before." Keisha met her eyes. "I'm still here." Another long silence. Then Rosa nodded, and something like respect flickered across her face. "You're hired. You start tomorrow. The staff quarters are downstairs. I'll show you later. For now, let me give you a tour of the house." They walked through the mansion. Living room, dining room, recreation room, indoor pool. Every room was bigger than Keisha's entire apartment. Every piece of furniture probably cost more than she made in a year. It was cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. They were on the second floor when Keisha heard a voice from down the hall. "Tell Santino if he doesn't pay within 48 hours, he won't need to pay anymore, ever." She froze. A man stepped out of a room at the end of the corridor. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that fit like it had been sewn directly onto his body. Dark hair, angular face, eyes that could have been carved from ice. He was on the phone, but he stopped when he saw them. His gaze swept over Keisha, quick, dismissive, like she was furniture he hadn't noticed before. Then he walked past without a word. Keisha didn't breathe until he disappeared around the corner. "That's Mr. Russo," Rosa said quietly. "The boss. You don't need to know much about him. Just do your job and stay out of his way." Keisha nodded, still trying to get her heart rate under control. They kept walking. And then she saw them. 3 little girls. They were standing on the staircase about halfway up, holding hands in a row. Black curls, brown eyes, faces so identical, Keisha couldn't tell them apart. They looked like angels. But their eyes? Their eyes were empty. Like the lights were on, but nobody was home. Like someone had reached inside them and scooped out everything that made them human. "That's Lucia Valentina and Mia," Rosa said, her voice dropping. "Mr. Russo's daughters. They don't talk. Not since their mother died. It's been 14 months. Keisha stared at the girls. The girls stared back. And for a moment, just a moment, something flickered in those empty eyes. Not fear, not suspicion. Curiosity. It was gone almost immediately. The girls turned and walked back up the stairs, still holding hands, still silent. But Keisha had seen it. Something in her chest tightened, a feeling she couldn't name. She thought about her own mother dead from a broken heart. She thought about her father bleeding out on the sidewalk. She thought about Marcus rotting in a prison cell for something he didn't do. She knew what it felt like to lose everything. She knew what it felt like to go silent. Rosa was already walking away, listing cleaning schedules and rules. Keisha followed, half listening. But her mind was still on those 3 little girls. Something was going to happen in this house. She didn't know what. She didn't know when. But standing there in that cold, empty mansion, Keisha Williams felt a thread being tied between her soul and 3 broken children. And nothing, not the armed guards, not the mafia boss, not the mountain of grief and silence that filled this place, was going to cut it. Keisha started work at 6 in the morning. She dusted bookshelves that seemed to go on forever. She vacuumed Persian rugs worth more than everything she'd ever owned. She polished silver that probably hadn't been touched in months. Rosa followed her from room to room, watching, but not speaking. Testing her. Keisha didn't complain. She didn't slow down. She just worked. Around noon, they stopped in the second-floor corridor right outside a closed door. Keisha could feel something on the other side. A heaviness, like the air itself was holding its breath. "Do you have experience with children?" Rosa asked suddenly. Keisha's hands stopped moving. The cloth she was holding hung in midair. The question hit her somewhere deep, somewhere she didn't like to go. "Why do you ask?" Rosa nodded toward the closed door. "Those girls haven't spoken in 14 months. The boss has spent millions trying to fix them. Psychologists, specialists, therapists from every country you can name. Nothing works. They just sit in there holding hands, staring at nothing." Keisha looked at the door. She thought about what was behind it. 3 little girls trapped in silence, just like she'd been trapped after her father died. "Maybe they don't need someone to fix them," she said quietly. "Maybe they just need someone who understands." Rosa studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in the older woman's eyes. Hope maybe, or desperation reaching for anything it could hold. "We'll see," Rosa said. And they moved on. But Keisha kept thinking about that door, about those empty eyes on the staircase, about the silence that filled this house like water filling a drowning man's lungs. She knew that silence. She'd lived in it for 6 months after her mother died. The first week, Keisha didn't try anything special. She cleaned, she organized, she did exactly what she was hired to do, but she also sang, not loudly, just soft melodies barely above a whisper. Old gospel songs her mother used to sing while she cooked dinner in their tiny Bronx apartment. "His eye is on the sparrow," she hummed while wiping down the banister. "And I know he watches me." She sang while she folded laundry. She sang while she mopped floors. She sang like she was alone, like no one was listening. But someone was. On the 3rd day, Keisha was cleaning the second-floor hallway when she felt eyes on her back. She didn't turn around. She kept working, kept singing. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Lucia, the oldest of the 3. She was standing in the doorway of the girls' room, one hand on the frame watching. Keisha's heart beat faster, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Don't push. Don't force it. Just be present." She kept singing. 5 minutes passed. 10. 20. Lucia was still there. Keisha wanted so badly to turn around to smile, to say something, but instinct held her in place. These girls had been pushed by experts for 14 months. They didn't need more pushing. They needed space. So Keisha just sang her voice, soft and warm in the cold hallway. "Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come?" When she finally glanced back, Lucia was gone. The door had closed again. But it was a start. The second week, something shifted. Keisha was sitting in the laundry room folding tiny dresses. Pink, purple, blue. She folded them carefully like they were precious things, and she sang the same songs she always sang. Then she heard footsteps. Small. hesitant. She didn't look up. A shadow appeared at the edge of her vision. Valentina, the middle sister. She walked into the room and sat down on the floor about 3 feet away from Keisha. She didn't say anything. She just sat there watching. Keisha kept folding, kept singing. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. An hour passed. Valentina didn't move. She just watched, her big brown eyes following Keisha's hands as they worked. Then, without a word, she stood up and left. But before she went, she looked back at Keisha. Just for a second. And there was something in that look. Something that hadn't been there before. The next day, Mia appeared. The youngest. She stood in the laundry room doorway, head tilted to one side, like a bird listening to a faraway sound. She didn't come in. She just listened. Keisha kept singing, kept folding, but her heart was pounding now. Something was happening. Something was changing. That night she lay in her small room in the basement, staring at the ceiling, thinking about those 3 little girls. She thought about her brother Marcus, sitting in a prison cell for a crime he didn't commit. She thought about her father bleeding out on the sidewalk while she ran toward him, knowing she was already too late. She thought about her mother wasting away in bed, dying of a broken heart. And she thought about those empty eyes on the staircase. Lord, she whispered into the darkness. I don't know why you brought me here, but if there's something I can do for those children, show me. Please. She fell asleep with tears on her cheeks. The 3rd week brought the first miracle. Keisha was in the laundry room, same as always, folding clothes, singing softly. When she lifted a stack of clean sheets, she found it. A piece of paper lying on top of the pile. She picked it up. It was a drawing. Crayon on white paper. A butterfly with purple wings, uneven, crooked, the antenna bent at odd angles. But to Keisha, it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. She sat down on the floor holding the picture with both hands, and she stared at it for a long time. She knew who had drawn it. Lucia. The girl who had watched her the longest, who had been studying her since the very first days. And she knew Lucia was watching now. She could feel those eyes through the crack in the half-open door. This is beautiful, Keisha whispered. Quiet enough to seem like she was talking to herself, but loud enough for Lucia to hear. This butterfly is so beautiful. She stood up slowly. She carried the drawing out of the laundry room and walked to the kitchen. She found a spot on the wall beside the window where the morning light would fall every single day. She taped the picture there right at eye level. Then she stepped back and looked at it. Perfect, she murmured. From the edge of the hallway, a pair of eyes watched. Lucia. She had followed Keisha from the laundry room. When she saw her drawing hanging on the wall like it was a masterpiece in a museum, something flickered in those empty eyes. A spark. Tiny, but real. Then she turned and disappeared. Keisha stood there looking at the purple butterfly, and she felt tears sliding down her cheeks. It was working. She didn't know how. She didn't know why. But it was working. The 4th week, Keisha was dusting the sitting room when she felt someone behind her. She kept singing, kept working. His eye is on the sparrow. Then she heard it. A whisper. Small as a breath. Fragile as a butterfly's wing, brushing the air. Sing. One word. Keisha froze. Her hand stopped in midair. Her heart missed a beat, then raced twice as fast. That was the first word. After 14 months of silence, one of the 3 girls had spoken. Mia, the youngest, the one who used to make up songs in the bathtub. Every instinct screamed at Keisha to turn around, to grab the child, to cry, to call Rosa, to tell everyone. But she didn't. She knew that if she reacted too strongly, she would shatter this fragile moment like glass. So she just kept singing. Softer now. Gentler. Like she was rocking a newborn. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. Then she heard it. A tiny hum. Mia was singing along. Not words, just the melody. But she was singing. After 14 months of silence, Mia was singing. Keisha kept going. She finished the song, then started again from the beginning. Mia hummed with her. They stood there backs to each other singing the same song. No eye contact. No words. Just music flowing between them, like a bridge being built over dark water. When Keisha finally turned around, Mia was gone. But something had changed forever. The 5th week, the walls started coming down. Keisha was folding clothes in the girls' room now. They let her in. They didn't shut the door when she came. She sat on the floor folding tiny dresses, and she sang a different song this time. A sadder one. The song her mother had sung in her final days, lying in bed with faraway eyes, remembering her husband. Valentina sat on the bed watching her. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Valentina asked, "Why do you sing so sad?" Keisha stopped. She looked up. This was the first time Valentina had spoken to her. Not just a word, but a whole question. Keisha set down the dress she was folding. She moved closer to the bed, kneeling so her eyes were level with the little girl's. "Because sometimes sadness is beautiful too, sweetheart," she said gently. "It means we loved someone very much. So much that when they're gone, we still remember. We still feel sad. Because love doesn't disappear just because the person we love isn't here anymore." Valentina was quiet. Her big brown eyes held Keisha's without blinking. "I'm sad too," she said finally. Her voice was small as a falling leaf. Keisha felt her heart crack down the middle. "I know, Angel," she whispered. "I'm sad too." Valentina looked at her for a long moment, searching for something. Then she reached out and touched Keisha's cheek. A touch as light as a butterfly wing. Warm, full of trust. Keisha didn't move. She let that small hand rest on her face. Tears gathered in the corners of her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. She let them fall. Because sometimes tears were beautiful too. In the doorway, Lucia and Mia stood watching hand in hand. Their eyes weren't empty anymore. Something was waking up inside them. Something that had died 14 months ago was slowly, gently coming back to life. The 6th week, the silence shattered completely. Lucia was the first to speak about her mother. She was sitting beside Keisha in the laundry room, watching her fold clothes. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "Mommy used to sing too." Her voice was small and raspy, like her throat had forgotten how to make sounds after so long. Keisha's hands paused, but she didn't look at Lucia. She was afraid if she looked, the child would stop. "She did," Keisha asked softly. "Mommy sang when she cooked. Mommy sang when she gave us baths. Mommy sang so pretty." Lucia's voice started to tremble. "Mommy was so beautiful. She had long black hair. She had brown eyes like us. She smiled all the time." The little girl's voice broke. "Then Mommy stopped smiling. Then Mommy went away." Keisha still didn't turn. She let Lucia talk. She let the words pour out like water that had been dammed for too long, finally finding a way to escape. "Where did Mommy go?" Lucia whispered. "Why didn't she take us with her?" Keisha set down the shirt she was holding. She turned to face Lucia, and she saw tears streaming down the child's face. "Your mommy didn't want to leave you," Keisha said, her own voice thick with emotion. "She loved you so much. She loved you more than anything in the whole world. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and nobody knows why. But your mommy is still with you. She's watching over you from heaven. She's in your heart always." Lucia stared at her. "How do you know?" "Because no mother wants to leave her children. Never." Lucia was quiet for a long moment. Then she climbed into Keisha's lap and buried her face in her shoulder. And she cried. For the first time in 14 months, Lucia cried. Real crying. The kind that comes from deep in your chest and shakes your whole body. The kind that has been locked away for too long. Keisha held her tight and cried with her. The next day, Valentina asked the hardest question. Why did Mommy have to die? They were in the girls' bedroom. Keisha was tidying up, and Valentina was sitting on the bed watching her with those big brown eyes. I asked Daddy, Valentina continued. But Daddy didn't say anything. Daddy just walked away. Daddy never talks about Mommy. Keisha sat down on the edge of the bed. This was dangerous territory. She didn't know the full truth. She only knew pieces she'd picked up from Rosa. Sometimes, she said carefully, there are bad people in the world. People who do terrible things for terrible reasons. What happened to your Mommy wasn't fair. It wasn't right. And nobody, not you, not your sisters, not your daddy, nobody could have stopped it. But why? Valentina's voice cracked. Why Mommy? Why not someone else? Keisha felt tears burning in her eyes. She thought about her own father lying in a pool of blood on the sidewalk. She thought about all the times she'd asked that same question. I don't know, baby, she said honestly. I ask God that question about my own daddy sometimes, and I still don't have an answer. But I know one thing for sure. Your Mommy loved you. She loved you so much that she protected you with her own body. She made sure you were safe even when she couldn't be. That's how much she loved you. Valentina's lower lip trembled. I want Mommy back. I know you do, sweetheart. I know. I want Mommy to come home. I know. Valentina threw herself into Keisha's arms and sobbed. Keisha held her, rocking her gently, singing softly through her own tears. That night, Mia spoke about her mother for the first time. She was lying in bed, eyes turned up to the ceiling. Keisha sat beside her singing softly. I miss the way Mommy smelled. Mia whispered, her voice dreamy, like she was talking inside a dream she couldn't quite wake from. What did she smell like? Flowers. Like the pretty white flowers in the garden. Mommy held me every night, and I used to smell her hair before I fell asleep. Mia's voice cracked. I can't remember the smell anymore. I try and try, but I can't remember. Keisha felt her heart shatter into a million pieces. She reached out and stroked Mia's hair with a tenderness that made her hands shake. You'll remember, baby, she whispered. Maybe not with your nose, but you'll remember with your heart. The things we love never truly disappear. They live in here. She placed her hand over Mia's chest. They live in our hearts forever. Mia turned to look at her, and then she cried. For the first time in 14 months, the youngest sister cried out loud. Not silent tears, real crying, sobbing. The kind that hurts and heals at the same time. Keisha pulled her into her arms. In the doorway, Lucia and Valentina appeared. When they saw Mia crying, they started crying too. They climbed onto the bed and pressed into Keisha's arms. The four of them held each other and wept, crying for Isabella, crying for the months of silence, crying for all the pain they'd kept locked inside for too long. Keisha cried with them. She cried for her father, for her mother, for Marcus, for herself. That night, for the first time, the pain was shared, and once it was shared, it felt a little less heavy. The 7th week, laughter came back, not once, but many times. Every day the girls started helping Keisha around the house. Lucia helped fold laundry. She wasn't good at it. The towels came out lumpy, and the shirts were always crooked, but she tried so hard, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Valentina helped water the plants. She asked the name of every single flower. She asked why leaves were green. She asked why plants needed water. She asked why, about everything. Mia helped bake. She got flour all over her face and dough in her hair, and she licked sugar from the spoon when she thought Keisha wasn't looking. And she laughed. A bright, clear giggle, like wind chimes in a summer breeze. They sang together. Old songs, new songs, silly songs they made up on the spot. The kitchen filled with music. One afternoon, Rosa stood outside the kitchen door, watching through the crack. Mia was sitting on Keisha's shoulders. her small hands tangled in Keisha's braids, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. Lucia and Valentina were sitting on the kitchen counter, legs swinging, singing at the top of their lungs. Keisha was dancing around the kitchen, a wooden spoon in her hand, like a microphone, making the girls shriek with laughter. On the wall, Lucia's purple butterfly drawing was still taped beside the window, catching the afternoon light. Rosa lifted a hand to her mouth. Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. 14 months. 14 months of silence. No psychologist had done this. No specialist. No amount of money. But this woman had done it in 7 weeks. Rosa backed away from the kitchen door, her hands trembling. She pulled out her phone and dialed Dominic's number. He was in Miami. Some deal. Some meeting. Always something. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "What is it, Rosa?" His voice was clipped, cold, impatient. Rosa opened her mouth to tell him, to shout that his daughters were talking, laughing, singing, that a miracle had happened. But the words stuck in her throat. She was afraid. Afraid he wouldn't believe her. Afraid that if she spoke it out loud, the magic would disappear. "You should come home, boss," she said quietly. "I'm busy. What's going on?" "Nothing urgent. Just, you should come home." Silence on the line. "I'll come back when I'm finished." Click. Rosa stared at the phone, her heart sinking. Then she turned and looked back toward the kitchen. The laughter was still there, rising and ringing through the halls of the empty mansion. And Rosa found herself wondering, when Dominic finally came home, would he recognize the miracle unfolding under his own roof? Or would he destroy it the way he destroyed so many things in his life? The 8th week changed everything. It was late afternoon. Keisha was in the kitchen with the girls, teaching them to make cookies. Flour covered every surface. Chocolate chips were scattered across the counter. The radio was playing, and all 4 of them were singing along. Mia was on Keisha's shoulders, her favorite spot, her small hands pulling at Keisha's braids while she laughed. Lucia and Valentina were on the kitchen table, legs swinging, mouths open in song. Nobody heard the front door open. Nobody heard the footsteps in the hallway. Nobody saw the shadow appear in the kitchen doorway. Not until his voice cut through the air like a knife. "What the hell is going on in here?" The singing stopped. The laughter died. Mia went stiff on Keisha's shoulders. Keisha turned around slowly. Dominic Russo stood in the doorway, his face dark as a thundercloud, his eyes burning with something she couldn't read. His briefcase had fallen to the floor. His hands were clenched at his sides. And he was staring at her like she was an intruder, like she was a threat, like she was the enemy. For 3 seconds, Dominic couldn't move. His daughters were singing. His daughters were laughing. His daughters, who hadn't spoken a single word in 14 months, were alive again. Joy flooded through him, relief so intense it nearly buckled his knees. Gratitude he thought had died with Isabella. Then Mia shouted from Keisha's shoulders, "Sing louder, Miss Keisha! Miss Keisha!" And something twisted inside Dominic's chest. Miss Keisha, not Daddy. Miss Keisha. The joy vanished. In its place came something darker, something he couldn't control. This woman had done what he couldn't. She had brought his daughters back from the dead while he, the most powerful man in New York, the man who had spent millions, hired the best experts, bought everything money could buy, had failed. Jealousy. That's where it started. A small flame in his chest. Shame fed the flame. He was their father. He should have been the one making them laugh. He should have been the one they called for, not this stranger. "I asked you a question." His voice came out harder than he intended. Colder. "What the hell is going on in here?" Keisha carefully lifted Mia from her shoulders and set her on the floor. The little girl's face crumpled. Her lips started trembling. "Sir, I was just... You were hired to clean." Dominic stepped into the kitchen. Each footstep sounded like thunder. "Not to turn my kitchen into a circus." Lucia and Valentina shrank back on the kitchen table. They grabbed each other's hands, their eyes wide with fear. They had seen their father angry before, but never like this. Never aimed at someone they loved. Mia started to cry. A small, strangled sound. She ran and hid behind Keisha's legs, both hands gripping her skirt. Keisha stood tall. She didn't bow her head. She didn't step back. 3 years of surviving on her own had taught her that showing weakness only made predators attack harder. "The girls were happy, sir," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "This is the first time in 14 months they've talked. They've laughed. They've sung. Can't you see that? I don't need you telling me what my children need." Dominic moved closer. A vein stood out in his neck. His fists were clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. "They're my children, not yours. You have no right. I'm the only one who got them to speak again." The words stopped Dominic cold. Keisha looked him straight in the eyes, her brown eyes meeting his black ones without flinching. "How many experts did you hire?" she continued. "How much money did you spend? Millions, tens of millions. None of them could do it. But I did. In 8 weeks. She took a breath. "You can fire me, but you can't deny the truth." Nobody spoke to Dominic Russo like that. Not his men, not his enemies, not even other bosses. But this woman, this housekeeper with nothing to her name, stood there and threw the truth in his face. The truth he didn't want to hear. The truth that proved he had failed. His anger doubled, tripled. It needed somewhere to go. "You're fired," he snarled through clenched teeth. "Pack your things. Get out of my house, now." Keisha just looked at him. There was no fear in her eyes, no begging. Only something that looked like disappointment and pity. That made Dominic even more furious. He didn't need anyone's pity, especially not from a housekeeper. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Rosa ran in breathless, her face pale. "Boss," she grabbed the doorframe for support. "You don't understand. She did what no one else could. The girls are talking. The girls are laughing. Please just listen." "Shut up." Rosa flinched like he'd slapped her. In 15 years with the Russo family, Dominic had never spoken to her like that. She had been with him through everything: his rise to power, his wedding, the birth of his children, Isabella's funeral. She had never been afraid of him. Until now. Tears streamed down Rosa's wrinkled cheeks. She opened her mouth to speak again, but no words came out. Dominic turned back to Keisha. "Get out," he said. His voice was ice. "Before I do something we'll both regret." Keisha looked at him for a long moment. Then she knelt down and gently pried Mia's hands from her skirt. The little girl cried harder. "Miss Keisha, don't go. Please don't go. Miss Keisha." The sound tore through Keisha's heart like a blade, but she couldn't stay. She couldn't fight a mafia boss in his own home. She cupped Mia's face in her hands and wiped the tears from her cheeks. "You're going to be okay, Angel," she whispered. "You're all going to be okay. I love you. I'll always love you." She stood up. She walked past Dominic without looking at him. Her chin was lifted. Her back was straight. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she didn't hide them. She didn't wipe them away. She walked out of the kitchen and down the hallway, leaving behind the sounds of 3 children crying. At the front door she paused. She looked back one last time at the mansion that had become something like home. At the life she had built here in 8 short weeks. Then she stepped outside and walked away. The moment Keisha left, something changed in the kitchen. The 3 girls stopped crying. Not gradually. All at once. Like someone had flipped a switch. Lucia climbed down from the kitchen table slowly, mechanically. Valentina followed, then Mia. They stood in a line holding hands. Just like 14 months ago. Their faces went blank. The light in their eyes, the light Keisha had spent 8 weeks kindling, went out. They looked at their father, but not with a daughter's eyes, with a stranger's eyes. Cold, distant, empty. Dominic felt ice crawl up his spine. "Girls," he said. His voice had lost its edge. "Daddy's home. Aren't you happy to see Daddy?" No response. "I got rid of her because she wasn't supposed to be playing with you like that. She was supposed to be cleaning. You understand, right?" Silence. "Girls, say something, please." The three of them turned away. In perfect unison, like they had practiced it. They walked out of the kitchen hand in hand and headed up the stairs. They didn't look back. Dominic stood alone in the kitchen. The flour was still scattered across the counter. The chocolate chips were still everywhere. The purple butterfly drawing was still taped to the wall. But the laughter was gone. The singing was gone. Everything was gone. Rosa appeared in the doorway. Her eyes were red from crying. "Boss," she said quietly, "what have you done?" Dominic didn't answer. He couldn't. He just stood there staring at the empty doorway where his daughters had disappeared. The next 3 days were hell. The silence came back, but this time it was worse. So much worse. Before, the girls had been silent with everyone. They didn't speak to anyone, didn't react to anyone. But now their silence had a target. Dominic. On the first morning, he tried to have breakfast with them. He sat down at the table. The three girls were already there, plates of pancakes in front of them. They didn't eat. They didn't move. The moment Dominic sat down, all three of them stood up. At the same time, like they had agreed on it beforehand. They walked out of the dining room without a word. Dominic sat alone with 4 plates of cold pancakes. On the second day, he tried to go into their room. He knocked. No answer. He opened the door anyway. The girls were sitting on the bed holding hands like always, but when he came in they turned away, all 3 of them. They showed him their backs and stared at the wall. "Girls," he called. "Daddy's sorry. Daddy knows he was wrong. Please look at Daddy." Nothing. "I'll bring her back. I'll find Miss Keisha and bring her back. Would you like that?" Still nothing. "Please, just look at me. Just one word. Anything." 15 minutes he stood there talking, apologizing, begging. They never moved. They never turned. They never spoke. Finally, Dominic stepped out and closed the door. He leaned against the wall in the hallway, his legs shaking. He had faced down rival bosses. He had survived assassination attempts. He had stared death in the face more times than he could count. None of it had prepared him for this. On the third night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Isabella, about the happy days before everything fell apart, about his daughter's laughter, which he had taken for granted until it was gone, about Keisha and how she had brought that laughter back, about himself and how he had destroyed it. Around 2 in the morning, he got up and went to the girls' room. He opened the door quietly, trying not to make a sound. Moonlight streamed through the window, washing over the 3 little girls in a layer of silver. They lay pressed close together on the bed, hands still clasped even in sleep. Dominic walked in slowly. 1 step, then another. He stood beside the bed, looking down at 3 angel faces. He wanted to touch them, to stroke their hair, to kiss their foreheads the way Isabella used to do every night. He reached out his hand. Then Lucia opened her eyes. She didn't startle. She didn't look afraid. She just opened her eyes and stared at him. The moonlight reflected in those big brown eyes. And Dominic saw something that made his blood run cold. Hate. Pure burning hate. "You sent Miss Keisha away," Lucia said. Her voice was ice, not trembling, not crying. Just the truth, brutal and unforgiving. "I hate you." 3 words. They hit Dominic like 3 bullets to the chest. Lucia turned her face to the wall and closed her eyes. Like she had never woken up. Like she had never spoken. Dominic stood frozen. He didn't know how long he stayed there. Minutes. Hours. It didn't matter. Finally, he backed away. He left the room. He closed the door behind him. And he knew. That was the last time Lucia would speak to him. Dominic went straight to his study. He didn't turn on the lights. He sat down in his chair in the darkness. He reached for the bottle of whiskey on his desk and drank straight from it. The liquor burned his throat, but it wasn't hot enough to burn away the pain in his chest. On his desk in a silver frame, Isabella smiled at him. Beside her in the photo were their 3 little girls taken 6 months before she was murdered. 4 bright smiles, 4 happy eyes. A perfect family, now just a memory. Dominic picked up the photograph and stared into Isabella's eyes. "I failed, sweetheart," he whispered. "I failed the girls. I destroyed everything." He cried. For the first time since Isabella's funeral. For the first time in 14 months. Real tears. The kind he never let anyone see. He cried for Isabella. For his daughters. For himself. For everything that had been lost. Then the pain turned to anger. He needed to do something. He needed to pour it out. He grabbed his phone and called Marco. "Find me someone," he said the moment Marco picked up. "Anyone. I need to kill someone. I need to let this out." Silence on the other end. Then Marco spoke. His voice was steady, gentle, like he was talking to a friend, not his boss. "Killing doesn't bring them back, boss." Dominic went still. "You wiped out the Mendez cartel," Marco continued. "Every last one of them. Did it bring your wife back? Did it make the girls speak again?" Dominic's hand tightened around the phone. "Violence doesn't solve pain, boss. You know that." Dominic didn't answer. He sat there in the dark, the phone pressed to his ear, tears drying on his cheeks. Then he hurled the phone at the wall. It shattered. Pieces flew everywhere. He sat alone in the darkness, with a half-empty bottle of whiskey, with Isabella's photograph, with a truth he couldn't escape. He had destroyed the only thing left. Not because of enemies, not because of danger, because of jealousy, because of pride, because of his own stupidity. And this time there was no one to take revenge on, no one to blame, only himself. The next morning, Rosa found him still in the study. He hadn't moved all night. The whiskey bottle was empty. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked like a corpse. "Boss," she said quietly, "you need to find her." Dominic didn't look up. "Keisha," Rosa pressed, "you need to find her and bring her back. It's the only way." "She won't come back." His voice was hollow, dead. "Why would she? After what I did?" "Because she loves those girls." Rosa moved closer. "I watched her for 8 weeks. The way she looked at them. The way she held them. She loves them like they're her own. And she's hurting right now just like they are." Dominic finally looked up. His eyes met Rosa's. "She'll never forgive me." "Maybe not. But you have to try. For the girls. They're dying in there, boss. Day by day they're dying, and you're the only one who can save them." Dominic stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood up. "Call Marco," he said. "Tell him I need him here. Now." Marco arrived within the hour. He walked into the study and stopped short when he saw Dominic. In 15 years, he had never seen his boss look this broken. "I need you to find someone," Dominic said. "Who?" "Keisha Williams, the woman Rosa hired. I need to know everything about her, where she lives, where she works, her family, her history, everything." Marco nodded. "I'll have it by tonight." He turned to leave. "Marco." He stopped. Dominic's voice cracked. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I need to fix it." Marco looked at his boss, his friend, for a long moment. "I know," he said quietly. "I'll find her." Marco was the best at finding people. He started with what he knew. Keisha Williams, 27 years old. African American, lived in the Bronx. Hired by Rosa 8 weeks ago. He dug deeper. He called his contacts in the NYPD, in the underground. People who knew everything that happened on New York streets. By midnight, he had the full picture. Keisha Williams, daughter of James Williams, a mechanic who owned a small auto repair shop in the Bronx. 3 years ago, James Williams was shot dead outside his shop. 3 bullets. Chest, stomach, head. The reason he refused to pay protection money to a gang called Los Diablos. Marco went cold when he read that name. Los Diablos. He remembered them. He remembered them too well. 2 years ago, the Russo family expanded into the Bronx. Los Diablos controlled the area. Small-time gang running protection rackets and loan sharking. They refused to move aside. Dominic ordered them eliminated. Marco led the team himself. They tracked Los Diablos to their hideout, an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the Bronx. 23 men. By morning, there were none. The whole gang wiped out in a single night. Marco sat in his car staring at the laptop screen. James Williams killed by Los Diablos. Los Diablos killed by the Russo family. Keisha Williams working for the man who had avenged her father's murder without either of them knowing. Fate. Marco didn't believe in fate. He believed in guns and money and power. But what else could you call this? He kept digging. Keisha's mother, Patricia Williams, died 6 months after her husband. Official cause heart failure. Real cause grief. Keisha's brother, Marcus Williams, 22 years old, serving 10 years in Sing Sing for drug possession and illegal weapons. But the file was suspicious. The evidence was too perfect. The witness had a criminal record. The public defender barely put up a fight. It looked like a setup. Marcus Williams was innocent, and his sister had spent 3 years working herself to death trying to save him. Marco closed the laptop. He sat there in the dark for a long time thinking. Then he started the car and drove back to the mansion. Dominic was waiting in the study. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. He had just sat there staring at Isabella's photograph waiting. Marco walked in and sat down across from him. "Boss," he said, "there's something you need to know." He told Dominic everything. About James Williams and the auto repair shop. About Los Diablos. About that night 2 years ago. About how all of it connected. Dominic listened without speaking. When Marco finished, he didn't move for a long time. "Does she know?" Dominic finally asked. "Does she know I killed the men who murdered her father?" Marco shook his head. "Nobody knows. She only knows her father was killed, and nobody was punished." Dominic closed his eyes. All this time, the woman who healed his daughters had lost her father the same way he lost his wife. To violence. To the brutality of this world. And he, without knowing it, had avenged her father's death. Fate. "Where is she now?" Dominic asked. Marco pulled out a slip of paper. "Small apartment in the Bronx, 3rd floor, 15th Street. She works 2 jobs at cafe during the day, cleaning offices at night. Goes to college in the evenings." Dominic opened his eyes. "Take me there," he said. "Now." Marco stood. "Boss, are you sure? After everything that happened?" "I'm sure." Dominic rose from his chair. For the first time in days, something stirred in his eyes. Not hope, not yet, but determination. "I destroyed the only thing that could save my family," he said. "Now I have to try to get it back." The black SUV pulled up to a worn-down building on 15th Street, just as the sun was coming up. Dominic stared out the window at the crumbling brick facade, the rusted fire escapes, the graffiti covering the walls. This was where Keisha lived. This was where she came home every night after working 16 hours. "You want me to come with you?" Marco asked. "No, wait here." Dominic got out of the car and walked toward the building. His Italian leather shoes looked ridiculous on this cracked sidewalk. His tailored suit made him look like he'd landed from another planet. He didn't care. He climbed 3 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled like mold and fried food. Paint peeled from the walls. A fluorescent light flickered overhead. He found her door. Apartment 3C. He raised his hand to knock, then stopped. What was he going to say? What words could possibly fix what he had done? He knocked anyway. Footsteps inside. A pause. Then the door cracked open, still on its chain. Keisha's eyes appeared in the gap. When she saw who it was, her face went hard as stone. "What do you want?" "I need to talk to you." "You already said everything you needed to say." She started to close the door. "Please." The word came out rougher than he intended. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Keisha stared at him through the crack. "You came all the way to the Bronx to talk the great Dominic Russo, standing in a hallway that smells like piss, begging a housekeeper for 5 minutes." Yes. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. She closed the door. For a moment, Dominic thought she was done with him. Then he heard the chain slide off. The door opened. Keisha stood there in jeans and a faded sweatshirt, her arms crossed over her chest. She didn't invite him in. "Talk," she said. Dominic had prepared a speech. He had rehearsed it in the car, organized his thoughts, planned exactly what to say. All of it disappeared the moment he looked into her eyes. "I was wrong," he said. The words came out raw, unpolished. "I was jealous. You did what I couldn't. You brought my daughters back to life. And instead of thanking you, instead of being grateful, His voice broke. He took a breath and tried again. "I destroyed everything. I destroyed the only good thing that's happened to my family in 14 months. And I don't have an excuse. I don't have a reason. I was just a jealous, prideful fool who couldn't stand that someone else succeeded where I failed." Keisha's expression didn't change. "You done?" "No." Dominic stepped closer. The girls went silent again. "The moment you walked out. They won't speak to anyone. They won't look at me." Lucia said. He stopped. The memory cut like a knife. Lucia said what? She said she hates me. For the first time, Keisha's hard expression cracked. Just a little. Just for a moment. "Those are the only words she's spoken since you left." Dominic continued. "I hate you. That's what my daughter said to me. And she's right. I deserve it." Keisha was quiet for a long moment. "So you came here because you need me to fix your family again," she finally said. "That's what this is about. You broke your toys, and now you want me to put them back together." "No, that's not—" "Then what?" Dominic looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who had survived things he couldn't imagine. Who had lost her father to violence, her mother to grief, her brother to injustice. Who worked 2 jobs and went to night school and still found room in her heart to love 3 broken little girls. "I came because I owe you the truth," he said. "And because I owe you more than I can ever repay." "The truth about what?" Dominic took a breath. "Your father, James Williams. He was killed 3 years ago by a gang called Los Diablos." Keisha's whole body went rigid. Her eyes flashed with pain and anger. "How do you know my father's name? How do you know about—" "I had my people look into your background. I know everything. Your father, your mother, Marcus. You had no right." Her voice shook. "You had no right to dig into my life like that." "I know. But there's something you need to hear." Dominic held her gaze. "Los Diablos. The gang that killed your father. They don't exist anymore." Keisha frowned. "What do you mean? 2 years ago, my family expanded into the Bronx. Los Diablos controlled that territory. They refused to move aside, so I eliminated them." The words hung in the air. Keisha stared at him, her mouth opened then closed. "You—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Every single member," Dominic said quietly. 23 men, the ones who killed your father, the ones who gave the order, all of them. Gone." Keisha took a step back. She reached for the doorframe to steady herself. "I didn't know about your father when I did it," Dominic continued. "I didn't know about you. It was business. But now—" He shook his head. "Now, it feels like something else. Like fate or God or whatever you want to call it. The men who murdered your father are dead. I killed them. And you, the daughter of that murdered man, you're the one who saved my daughters." Keisha's eyes filled with tears. She turned away, pressing a hand to her mouth. "Why are you telling me this?" Her voice was muffled, broken. "Because you deserve to know. Your father's killers didn't escape justice. They're gone. Every last one." Keisha stood with her back to him, her shoulders shaking. Dominic waited. He didn't know what else to say. He had given her the truth. What she did with it was up to her. Finally, she turned around. Tears streamed down her face, but her eyes had changed. The anger was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something softer. "My daddy was a good man," she said, her voice thick. "He worked on cars his whole life. Never hurt anybody. He just wanted to provide for his family. And they killed him like he was nothing, like his life didn't matter." "I know. I used to pray every night that God would punish them, that someone would make them pay. And you're telling me—" She couldn't finish. "They paid," Dominic said. "I promise you, they paid." Keisha wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She took a shaky breath. "That doesn't change what you did to me. What you did to those girls." "I know. Sorry doesn't fix it. I know that too. Then what do you want from me?" Dominic was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want you to come back. Not for me. For the girls. They need you. They're dying without you." Keisha shook her head. "I can't just—" "I'll pay you 10 times what you were making, 20 times. Name your price." "You think this is about money?" Her voice rose. "You think you can buy me back? You think you can throw cash at this and make it go away?" "No, that's not what I meant." "Then what? What can you possibly offer me that would make me walk back into that house after the way you treated me?" Dominic looked at her, and he said the only thing he had left. "Your brother." Keisha went still. "Marcus," Dominic continued. "He's in Sing Sing. 10-year sentence for possession. But he didn't do it. He was set up." "How do you—" "I told you. I had my people look into everything. The evidence was planted. The witness was paid off. Your brother is innocent, and he's rotting in prison for a crime he didn't commit." Keisha's face twisted with pain. "I know he's innocent. I've been trying to get him out for 3 years. I've spent every dollar I have on lawyers. Nothing works. The system doesn't care." "I care." She stared at him. "I have the best lawyers in New York," Dominic said. "I have connections in the justice system. I can reopen the case. I can find out who set him up. I can get Marcus out." "Why?" Keisha's voice cracked. "Why would you do that?" "Because it's the right thing. Because I've done too many wrong things in my life. The blood on my hands will never wash off. But I can do one good thing. I can help an innocent man get out of a place he doesn't belong." Keisha searched his face, looking for the lie, looking for the angle. "This isn't a trade," Dominic said. "I'm not asking you to give me anything in return. I'm going to help Marcus whether you come back or not. That's a promise." Tears spilled down Keisha's cheeks. She pressed both hands to her face. "Marcus is only 22, she whispered. "He just wanted to be an engineer. He had dreams. He had his whole life ahead of him. And they took it all." "I know. I've been fighting for 3 years, working myself to death, spending every penny, and nothing changes. Nothing ever changes." "It's going to change now." Keisha lowered her hands and looked at him. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something new in them. A tiny flicker of hope. "How do I know you're not lying? How do I know this isn't just another trick to get what you want?" "You don't," Dominic admitted. "You have no reason to trust me. I've given you every reason not to. But I'm telling you the truth. I'm going to help your brother. And I'm asking you, not telling you, asking to give me another chance. Not for my sake. For 3 little girls who are lost without you." Keisha was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I need to think." "Take all the time you need. I'm not promising anything. I understand. Dominic turned to leave. He was halfway down the hall when her voice stopped him. Mr. Russo. He turned back. Keisha stood in her doorway, arms wrapped around herself. If I come back and I'm saying if things have to change, really change, not just words, actions. What kind of change? You have to be a father, not a mafia boss who shows up once a month between business trips, a real father, home every day. Breakfast with your girls, dinner with your girls, bedtime stories. You have to know their teachers' names, their friends' names, what songs they like, what they're afraid of. Dominic nodded slowly. I can do that. Can you? Keisha's voice hardened. Because your work stole their mother, your empire, your enemies. Isabella died because of who you are. And those girls, they've already lost one parent. Don't make them lose another. The words hit Dominic like a physical blow. He stood there in that dirty hallway, looking at this woman who had nothing and yet somehow had everything that mattered. You're asking me to give up my life, he said quietly. No. I'm asking you to choose. Your daughters or your empire. You can't have both. You tried, and it didn't work. Isabella died. The girls went silent. You almost lost everything. She held his gaze. So choose, Mr. Russo. For once in your life, choose the thing that really matters. Not money, not power. Your children. Dominic stared at her. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever demanded that he look at his life and make a choice. But standing here in this broken-down building, looking at a woman who had lost everything, and still had the courage to fight, he knew she was right. He had been running for 14 months. Running from grief. Running from guilt. Running from his own failures. It was time to stop. 2 days, Keisha said. I'll give you 2 days to prove you mean it. Show me you can change, really change. Then I'll decide. Dominic nodded. 2 days. Don't disappoint me, Mr. Russo. Those girls have been disappointed enough. She stepped back into her apartment and closed the door. Dominic stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at that closed door. Then he turned and walked down the stairs out of the building back to the waiting SUV. Marco looked at him as he got in. Well, take me home, Dominic said, and cancel everything. All my meetings, all my trips, everything. Marco's eyebrows shot up. Everything. For the next 2 days I don't exist. You handle it, all of it. Boss the Gambino situation. Handle it. The Chicago deal. Handle it. Marco stared at him. In 15 years, Dominic had never stepped away from business. Not once. Not even when Isabella died. What's going on? Marco asked carefully. Dominic looked out the window at the Bronx streets sliding past. I'm trying to save what's left of my family, he said. That's what's going on. The next morning, Dominic woke up at 6. He couldn't remember the last time he'd woken up in his own house without rushing to catch a flight, without checking his phone for urgent messages, without a list of problems to solve and enemies to handle. He went downstairs to the kitchen. Rosa was there preparing breakfast. She looked at him like he was a ghost. Boss, you're not going to the office. I'm making breakfast, Dominic said. For the girls. Rosa's mouth fell open. But you can't cook. Then I'll learn. He looked at the kitchen, the stove, the refrigerator, the pans hanging on the wall. He had no idea where to start. Rosa must have seen the panic in his eyes because she sighed and started pulling out ingredients. Eggs, she said. We'll start with eggs. Even you can't ruin eggs. 30 minutes later, Dominic put 3 plates on the table. The eggs were slightly burnt. The toast was black around the edges. But it was food, and he had made it with his own hands. The 3 girls came down for breakfast. They sat in their usual spots, holding hands under the table. They looked at the plates. They looked at Dominic standing there in the kitchen wearing an apron butter on his hands. They didn't eat. They didn't pick up their forks. But they didn't walk away either. They just sat there watching him. Dominic sat down at the table with them. He didn't try to talk. He didn't try to force anything. He just sat there, present. For the first time in 14 months, truly present. They stayed like that for an hour, 4 people at a table surrounded by silence. But it was a different kind of silence now, not the cold, empty silence of grief. Something else. Something like waiting. On the second day, Dominic didn't leave the house. He didn't check his phone. He didn't go into his study. He didn't open his laptop. He sat in the living room while the girls played in the corner. They still weren't speaking. They still wouldn't look at him directly. But they didn't leave the room when he came in. He sat there for hours. Patient. Silent. Not pushing. Not demanding. Just being there. In the late afternoon, something happened. Mia was playing with a doll. She stood up and walked toward Dominic. Slow steps. Hesitant. Dominic didn't move. He barely breathed. Mia stopped in front of him and looked up, those big brown eyes meeting his. Then she reached out and touched his hand. Just for a second. A touch as light as a butterfly's wing. Then she pulled back, turned around and ran to her sisters. But that 1 second was enough. Dominic felt tears burning in his eyes. He didn't wipe them away. He let them fall. That night, he went to the girls' room before bed. They were lying on the bed holding hands as always, but when he came in, they didn't turn away. They watched him. Dominic sat down on the edge of the bed. "Girls," he said softly, "Daddy has something to tell you." No response. But they were listening. "Miss Keisha is coming back." Lucia's head turned. For the first time since that terrible night, she looked at him directly. "Really?" she asked. Her voice was small, suspicious, but there was hope underneath. Fragile hope. "Really, sweetheart. Daddy found her. Daddy apologized. She's going to come back." Valentina sat up. "When?" "Soon. I hope soon." Mia crawled across the bed and climbed into Dominic's lap. She didn't say anything. She just pressed herself against his chest and held on. Dominic wrapped his arms around her. Tears streamed down his face. "And Daddy's going to be here too," he said, his voice breaking. "Daddy's going to stay home. No more trips. No more business. Daddy's going to be with you every day. I promise." Lucia looked at him. "You promised before." "I know. You promised to take us to the park. You didn't." "I know. You promised to read us stories. You didn't." "I know, sweetheart. I know. Daddy broke a lot of promises, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He reached out and took her hand. "But this time is different. I'm going to prove it. Not with words, with actions. You'll see." Lucia stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she moved closer. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. She didn't say she forgave him. She didn't say she loved him. But she was there. She was close. And for Dominic, that was everything. That night, after the girls fell asleep, he called Keisha. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Mr. Russo." "I did it," he said. 2 days. I stayed home. I made breakfast. It was terrible, but I made it. I sat with them for hours. And tonight, Lucia let me hold her. Mia climbed into my lap. They're talking again. Not a lot, but they're talking. Silence on the line. "I know it's not enough," Dominic continued. "I know 2 days doesn't erase everything, but I'm trying. I'm really trying." More silence. Then Keisha's voice softer than before. "Rosa called me." "She did. She told me what you did. She said she's never seen you like this. She said you turned off your phone and didn't touch it for 2 days. She said you actually apologized to the girls." "I did." "She said you cried." Dominic closed his eyes. I did. Another long pause. I'll come back, Keisha said finally. Tomorrow morning. I'll come back. Relief flooded through Dominic's body. His legs nearly buckled. Thank you, he managed to say. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You still have a lot to prove. This is just the beginning. I know. And I'm holding you to your promise about Marcus. I already made the calls. My lawyers are on it. We're filing the appeal next week. Silence. Why are you doing this? Keisha asked quietly. Really? Why? Dominic thought about the question. About everything that had happened. About Isabella. About his daughters. About this woman who had lost so much and still found the strength to love. Because you taught me something, he said finally. You came into my house with nothing. No fancy degree. No special training. Just a heart full of love and the willingness to be present. And you did what millions of dollars couldn't do. You brought my daughters back to life. He paused. I've spent my whole life building an empire. Power. Money. Fear. I thought that was strength. But watching you seeing what you did with nothing but patience and love, I realized I had it backwards. Real strength isn't about what you can take. It's about what you can give. Keisha didn't respond for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Russo. See you tomorrow. She hung up. Dominic stood there with the phone in his hand, staring at nothing. For the first time in 14 months, he felt something he'd forgotten existed. Hope. The taxi pulled up to the iron gates at 8 in the morning. Keisha stepped out a small bag over her shoulder. She looked up at the mansion, the same fortress that had terrified her 3 months ago. It didn't look so terrifying anymore. The gate opened before she could press the intercom. They were watching, waiting. She walked up the stone path, her heart beating fast. Not from fear this time. From something else. Hope. Rosa was standing at the front door, tears already streaming down her face. Thank God, Rosa whispered. Thank God you came back. She pulled Keisha into a tight embrace. Keisha hugged her back, feeling the older woman's body shake with sobs. Thank you, Rosa said into her shoulder. Thank you for giving them another chance. Thank you for calling me, Keisha whispered back. Thank you for not giving up. Rosa pulled away, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. The girls are inside. They've been awake since 6. They wouldn't eat breakfast. They just kept asking when you were coming. Keisha smiled. Then, let's not keep them waiting. She walked through the front door, down the familiar hallway, past the paintings and bookshelves she had dusted so many times. She stopped at the entrance to the living room. Inside, Dominic sat on the sofa. The 3 girls sat beside him, pressed close together, their eyes fixed on the doorway. Waiting. Keisha stepped into the room. Hello, my little angels, she said. For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then, the explosion. Miss Keisha! Miss Keisha! Miss Keisha! All 3 girls screamed at once. They launched themselves off the sofa and ran toward her like 3 little missiles, 3 tiny hurricanes, 3 angels set free. Keisha dropped to her knees and opened her arms wide. They crashed into her, all 3 at once, nearly knocking her over. Small arms wrapped around her neck, her waist, her shoulders. Small faces pressed against her chest. You came back, Mia sobbed. You really came back. We missed you so much, Valentina cried. So much. Why did you leave? Lucia asked, her voice cracking. Why didn't you stay? Keisha held them tight, tears streaming down her face. She kissed their hair, their foreheads, their wet cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I left. I should have stayed. I should have fought harder. Can you forgive me? Yes. All 3 voices together. We forgive you. Keisha laughed through her tears. She hugged them tighter, trying to make up for every day she had been gone. She looked up and saw Dominic still sitting on the sofa. He hadn't moved. Tears ran down his face, the most powerful mafia boss in New York, crying like a child. Their eyes met. Keisha gave him a small nod. He nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. "Are you staying?" Lucia pulled back and looked at Keisha with those big brown eyes. Still suspicious. Still afraid. "Really staying, not leaving again?" Keisha cupped the child's face in her hands. "I'm staying," she said. "I promise. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be right here with you every single day." Lucia stared at her for a long moment. Then she smiled, the first real smile Keisha had seen from her since before everything fell apart. "Okay," Lucia said. "I believe you." And just like that, the world started healing. 6 months passed. 6 months of slow, steady rebuilding. Of new routines and old wounds finally beginning to close. Dominic kept his word. He handed most of his operations to Marco. The meetings, the deals, the problems, Marco handled them now. Dominic supervised from a distance, working only a few hours in the morning from his home office. The rest of his time belonged to his daughters. He was there for breakfast every morning. His cooking had improved. The pancakes were actually edible now, though Rosa still supervised with a watchful eye. He was there for dinner every night, sitting at the head of the table listening to the girls talk about their day. Who said what at school? Who played with whom at recess? What the teacher taught them about butterflies and planets and how plants grow. He learned their teachers' names. Miss Thompson taught Lucia. Miss Martinez taught Valentina and Mia. He learned their friends' names. Sophie and Emma were Lucia's best friends. Valentina had joined a reading club with a girl named Olivia. Mia had become inseparable from twins named Maya and Jade. He learned what songs they loved. Mia still adored Disney songs she sang Let It Go, until everyone in the house knew every word. Valentina had discovered pop music and begged for a radio in her room. Lucia had started listening to Taylor Swift humming melodies while she did her homework. He was there for bedtime stories. His voice wasn't as warm as Keisha's, wasn't as musical. But the girls didn't care. They just wanted him there, sitting on the edge of their bed, reading about princesses and dragons and faraway lands. He was there. That was what mattered. Keisha watched it all happen. She wasn't just the housekeeper anymore. She had become something more, part of the family. The girls called her Aunt Keisha now. She ate dinner at the table with them, not in the kitchen with the staff. She went on weekend outings to the park, to the beach, to the ice cream shop on Main Street. And she taught Dominic. Not with lectures or lessons. Just by showing him. "Don't try to fix everything," she told him one night after the girls were asleep. "Sometimes they don't need solutions. They just need someone to listen." Dominic struggled with that. His whole life had been about fixing problems. Someone caused trouble. He handled it. Someone stood in his way. He removed them. But you couldn't remove grief. You couldn't kill sadness. You could only sit with it. Hold it. Let it be. Slowly, he learned. 4 months after Keisha returned, Marcus Williams walked out of Sing Sing a free man. Dominic's lawyers had torn the case apart. They found the inconsistencies exposed. The planted evidence proved that the witness had been paid off by a rival gang trying to eliminate competition. The appeal took 3 months. The hearing took 2 hours. The judge threw out the conviction and ordered Marcus's immediate release. Keisha was waiting outside the prison gates. She had been there since dawn, pacing back and forth, unable to sit still. 3 years of fighting, 3 years of praying, 3 years of working herself to exhaustion, and now it was over. The heavy iron gate swung open. Marcus stepped out. He was thinner than she remembered, paler. But his eyes were still bright, still full of the same dreams that had filled them when he was 19 years old. "Sis," he called, his voice breaking. Keisha didn't wait. She ran to him, threw her arms around him, held him like she would never let go. "You're free," she sobbed into his shoulder. "You're finally free." Marcus hugged her back. His whole body shook with tears. "I didn't think I'd ever get out," he whispered. "I thought I was going to die in there. Never. I was never going to let that happen. Never." They stood there for a long time, holding each other, crying, not caring who was watching. Finally, Marcus pulled back. He looked past Keisha and saw the black SUV parked nearby. Saw the man in the expensive suit leaning against it. "Who's that?" Keisha wiped her eyes. "That's Mr. Russo. He's the one who made this happen." Marcus frowned. "Russo? As in—" "Yes, that Russo." Keisha took her brother's hand. "It's a long story. I'll explain everything. But right now, I just want you to meet someone. Some people who have been waiting to meet you." They walked to the car together. Dominic straightened as they approached. "Marcus," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Dominic Russo." Marcus hesitated. He knew that name. Everyone in New York knew that name. But this man had gotten him out of prison, had given him back his life. He shook Dominic's hand. "Thank you," Marcus said. "I don't know why you helped me, but thank you." Dominic's grip was firm. "Your sister saved my family. This is the least I could do." He opened the car door. "Come on. There are 3 little girls who have been asking about Uncle Marcus all week." Marcus looked at Keisha, confusion on his face. She smiled. "I told you. Long story." They got in the car and drove away from the prison, away from 3 years of darkness toward something new, something like a family. The months continued to pass. Marcus moved into an apartment in Queens, close enough to visit, but far enough to build his own life. He enrolled in night school to finish his engineering degree. During the day, he worked at a small architecture firm, a job Dominic had arranged, though he swore to Keisha that Marcus had earned it on his own merits. The girls adored him. Every Sunday he came to the mansion for dinner. He taught them how to build towers out of blocks, how to draw simple blueprints, how to dream big. "You can be anything you want," he told them. "Engineer, doctor, astronaut, anything. Don't let anyone tell you different." Lucia said she wanted to be a teacher. Valentina said she wanted to be a scientist. Mia said she wanted to be a singer. Marcus said they could be all 3 at once if they wanted. One evening, after Marcus had gone home and the girls were in bed, Keisha found Dominic sitting alone on the back porch. He was staring at the garden, at the empty flower beds that hadn't been touched since Isabella died. Keisha sat down beside him. "What are you thinking about?" Dominic was quiet for a moment. "Isabella used to love this garden," he said finally. "She planted sunflowers every spring, said they were her favorite because they always turned toward the light." Keisha nodded. "My mama used to say the same thing. Said sunflowers teach us how to live. No matter how dark it gets, keep turning toward the light." Dominic looked at her. Something moved behind his eyes, pain maybe, but also something else. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what? For everything. For coming into this house and seeing what no one else could see. For loving my daughters when I didn't know how. For not giving up on us." Keisha smiled. "Don't thank me. Thank God. He's the one who brought me here." Dominic shook his head. "I don't know if I believe in God anymore. Not after everything that's happened." "That's okay," Keisha said. "He believes in you. That's enough." They sat in silence watching the stars come out one by one. The next Saturday, Dominic called the girls to the backyard. Keisha was already there along with Rosa and Marcus, who had come by for the weekend. "What's going on, Daddy?" Lucia asked. Dominic held up a packet of seeds. "We're planting sunflowers." The girls' eyes went wide. "Like Mommy's sunflowers?" Valentina whispered. "Exactly like Mommy's sunflowers." They worked all afternoon, digging holes in the soil, dropping seeds one by one, watering them with little watering cans that Rosa had found in the garden shed. The girls got dirt all over their clothes, mud on their faces, grass stains on their knees. Nobody cared. When the last seed was planted, they stood in a circle around the garden bed, looking at the fresh, dark soil. "Will they really grow?" Mia asked. They'll grow, Keisha said. You just have to give them time, water, and love. That's all anything needs to grow. Lucia looked up at her father. Daddy, will you tell us about Mommy? Dominic's throat tightened. For 14 months, he had avoided talking about Isabella. It hurt too much. The memories were knives that cut him from the inside. But looking at his daughters' faces, hopeful, trusting, waiting, he knew he couldn't stay silent anymore. He knelt down, so he was at their level. Your mommy was the most beautiful woman I ever met, he began. Inside and out. She had a smile that could light up a whole room. And she loved you 3 more than anything in the world. More than sunflowers? Mia asked. Dominic laughed, tears in his eyes. More than sunflowers. More than the sun itself. Tell us more, Valentina said. Tell us everything. So he did. He told them about how he and Isabella met at a party when they were both 22. How she was the only person in the room who wasn't afraid of him. How she looked him in the eye and told him his tie was ugly. He told them about their first date, a disaster really. He took her to an expensive restaurant and spilled wine on her dress. She laughed and said it was the best date she'd ever had. He told them about the day they got married. How Isabella cried happy tears the whole ceremony. How he promised to love her forever and meant it with every piece of his soul. He told them about the day they were born. 3 tiny babies all at once. Isabella holding all 3 of them in her arms, exhausted but glowing, saying it was the happiest moment of her life. The girls listened with wide eyes, drinking in every word. These were stories they had never heard before. Memories they had been too young to form themselves, now given to them like gifts. When Dominic finished, Lucia reached out and took his hand. I miss Mommy, she said quietly. I know, sweetheart. I miss her too. But we still have you, Valentina said. And Aunt Keisha. And Uncle Marcus. And Rosa. And the sunflowers, Mia added. We have the sunflowers now. Dominic pulled all 3 of them into his arms. That's right, he whispered. We have each other. And we always will. Then Mia gasped. Daddy, look! Everyone turned. A butterfly had appeared from nowhere, purple wings delicate and shimmering catching the late afternoon light. It circled above the freshly planted garden, dipping and rising as if inspecting their work. Then it landed on the edge of the seed packet still lying on the ground. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The butterfly stayed there for several long seconds, its wings opening and closing slowly. It's Mommy, Mia whispered. Mommy came to see the sunflowers. Keisha felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She reached out and put a hand on Mia's shoulder. Your Mommy is always with you, she said softly. In the wind, in the sunshine, in butterfly wings. She never left. She's right here watching over you. The purple butterfly lifted off. It circled them once, a complete loop around the whole group, as if embracing them all. Then it flew away up and up toward the setting sun. The girls watched until it disappeared into the golden sky. Lucia turned to her father. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. Mommy's happy, she said. I can feel it. Mommy's happy that we planted the sunflowers. Dominic couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. He just nodded and held his daughters close. That night, after the girls were in bed, Dominic's phone buzzed. It was Marco. He looked at the screen for a long moment. 6 months ago, he would have answered immediately. 6 months ago, work was everything. Now, it was just noise. He turned off the phone and put it in a drawer. Keisha was in the kitchen washing the last of the dinner dishes. Dominic walked in and stood beside her. Need help? She looked at him surprised. You're offering to do dishes. I'm trying new things. She handed him a towel. You dry. They worked in silence for a few minutes, side by side. The girls are happy, Keisha said finally. Really happy. I can see it in their eyes. Because of you. Keisha shook her head. Because of all of us. It takes a village. Dominic was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm selling the ports. Keisha's hands stopped moving. What? The ports, the casinos, all of it. I'm getting out. She turned to look at him. You're serious. I've been thinking about it for a while. Marco can run everything. He's better at it than I am anyway. And he paused. I want to be here. Really here. Not 1 foot in 1 foot out. All the way. Keisha stared at him. That's a big change. I know. Your whole life. My whole life was wrong. Dominic set down the dish he was drying. I built an empire on blood and fear. I told myself it was for my family, but it wasn't. It was for me, my ego, my pride, and it cost me everything. It cost me Isabella. His voice broke. I can't bring her back. I can't undo what's been done. But I can choose differently now. I can choose my daughters. I can choose this life, whatever that looks like. Keisha reached out and touched his arm. Isabella would be proud of you, she said quietly. You think so? I know so. They stood there for a moment. Two people who had both lost everything and somehow found their way back to the light. Then Mia's voice came from upstairs. Aunt Keisha. Daddy, we can't sleep. We want more stories. Keisha laughed. Duty calls. They walked upstairs together. The girls were in their room, sitting up in bed, clearly not even close to sleepy. One more story. Lucia negotiated. Please. What kind of story? Dominic asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. A happy one, Valentina said. With a princess, Mia added. And a butterfly, Lucia said. There has to be a butterfly. Keisha sat down on the other side of the bed. Well, Mr. Russo, you heard them. One more story. With a princess and a butterfly. Dominic looked at his 3 daughters, then at Keisha. Once upon a time, he began, there was a king who thought he had everything. A castle, gold, power. But he was missing the most important thing of all. What? Mia asked. Love. Real love. The kind you can't buy. What happened? Valentina pressed. Dominic smiled. He met a queen, the most beautiful, kindest queen in all the land. And she taught him that true wealth isn't what you build. It's who you become. And the most precious thing in the world isn't power or money. It's the people who love you. Did they live happily ever after? Lucia asked. Dominic looked at his daughters, at Keisha, at the purple butterfly drawing still taped to the wall, a reminder of how far they had all come. They're still living it, he said, every single day. The girls smiled. One by one their eyes grew heavy. Mia fell asleep first, then Valentina, then Lucia. Keisha and Dominic sat there for a while longer watching them sleep. Thank you, Dominic whispered. For what? For believing that people can change, for giving me a chance I didn't deserve. Keisha looked at him. Everyone deserves a second chance. That's what grace is. She stood up quietly, careful not to wake the girls. At the door she turned back. Good night, Mr. Russo. Good night, Miss Williams. She smiled and walked out. Dominic sat there in the darkness listening to his daughters breathe. Outside the window the stars were bright. Somewhere out there Isabella was watching. He could feel it. I'm trying, he whispered to her. I'm finally trying. A breeze came through the open window, soft and warm, carrying the scent of the garden below. It felt like an answer. The next spring, the sunflowers bloomed. They grew tall and bright, their yellow faces turning toward the sun, just like Isabella had always said. The girls ran through the garden every morning, checking on each flower, naming them, talking to them like friends. Dominic watched from the porch, a cup of coffee in his hand. Keisha came and stood beside him. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "Yeah." He wasn't looking at the flowers. Beautiful. He had made his choice. His daughters. His family. This life. The empire he had built was someone else's problem now. And standing here watching his children laugh in the morning sun, he knew he had chosen right. Because what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Dominic Russo had gained the world once. He had lost everything that mattered. Now he had it back. Not the power, not the money, not the fear. Something better. Love that stays, even in silence, even in darkness, even when your hands are stained with blood. Love that stays, like a sunflower always turning toward the light.